Hello and welcome to the Last Place Fantasy Football Podcast. My name is Ryan. I'm here with my co-host Josh Richter. And we are here to recap week 1 of the NFL season and
What a week.
of our dynasty season. And we will be going over some of our predictions for week 2 and predictions for the NFL in general. You want to go ahead and take it away with our first segment?
So let's start off with this. What an incredible week that was week 1.
It
was such a good week of football.
Yeah. And honestly, just a blessing. I want to say this right off the bat. There were very limited injuries. Very limited injuries.
That makes me happy.
I was worried about it.
Unless you're a Ravens fan.
Yeah, that happened before week 1, though. So,
well, boy, we got news to tell you. So, let's start off with this. Which game did you watch week 1, Ryan?
So, I have to stick with my favorite team. I went with the Vikings. I mainly stuck with that one. I just sat down with my wife. She wanted to watch a game with me the first week of the season, and she wanted to sit down and watch the Vikings game. So, just a review of that. Vikings lost. It was a good game.
But do you feel vindicated taking Ja'Marr Chase that high?
That is the one upside to watching that Vikings game. I was watching the whole time and I was going, Ja'Marr Chase is not going to do anything. He's just going to sit, he's going to sit and just do nothing. And all of a sudden he, catches a couple of balls and gets 100 yards and a touchdown. And I'm back here going, yeah,
I was right. Because you'll see.
Yeah.
If you want to take a look back at our fantasy draft, you see me, you see Ethan, you see a couple people go, that
they're like,
high?
Really?
Yeah,
I said it in our draft. I was like, I'm taking a chance on him.
You called your shot.
I'm taking a chance on him.
And I applaud you for your vindication there.
Now, just because he did well in week 1 doesn't make him, an every week starter or anything. But he definitely he definitely shut down a lot of those preseason haters with, the whole NFL balls are different than, college balls. And
yeah, I can't find the white stripes.
Oh my gosh. I was really worried whenever he did that. I was like, oh my gosh, I drafted this guy.
You know what it made me what it reminded me of? Remember
what?
Trent Richardson, rookie minicamp, goes, I have to get used to wearing 2 numbers because the ball gets it slips more because I have 2 stitched numbers on it. And I went, that is so detailed that I am so afraid that's false. And then it ended up just being false. But man, that was a good game though, because I thought
it was
Thielen balled out. And then on top of that, Cook did his usual. Thielen did good. And even though Jefferson had I don't think you want to say a below average game. I think it was a pretty good game to start with week 1.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you know what I was proud of was Kirk Cousins. He came out balling, straight up. He did really well.
Yeah, I think you know what you're going to get with Kirk, but there's some games where you go, Kirk's good.
I mean, it was against the Bengals. I got to give them that. They're not a top of the tier or top tier team,
but they did look improved though, which I will say they look vastly improved.
But he picked them apart. Him and Thielen they went to town.
Week 1 Thielen.
Just what what hindered us so much was those stinking penalties. 12 penalties.
Oh, 12 too many.
Yeah, 12 too many.
Yeah. Well,
they killed us.
If we're going to talk about favorite team, let me say my condolences. I'm a Ravens fan, as you can tell by my very old Deion Sanders jersey behind me. But let's just say I was in a very loose cage of emotions when it came to the Monday night game. So we can bring in some of the news. We give our respects to Gus Edwards and his 2021 fantasy season. Immediately
And
making
J.K.
fun of
Dobbins.
and JK earlier, immediately making fun of my trade with Alex last week. Immediately lost that trade by default, I think. Now I'll have him next year, so
Oh
I'll be okay. But this year, man, here's what I will say: that game was going to be a blowout if Lamar wasn't playing.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And
He drug the Ravens through
yeah,
that game.
so I'm proud of how Lamar's playing. I am concerned with how the defense is because I think a lot of people got really scared that obviously you lose your top 3 running backs.
Yeah.
Definitely be worried.
Yeah,
But I think everyone kind of undersold how important Marcus Peters was. So that defense took a major hit. And
definitely.
now we lost one of our backup corners. So now the corners are down to 4. Marlon Humphrey, Jimmy Smith, Tavon Young, and Anthony Averett. Like, that's it. We have 14 players on IR, probably add another one because Ronnie Stanley is apparently not playing this week. So Lamar doesn't have his top O lineman, and we're going against Kansas City this week. But
yeah, it's going to be a tough game.
It will be a tough game. I thought here's the one bright spot for me. Well, there's a couple. I thought Lamar played vastly improved as a quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's with mechanics, especially that ball is starting to zip now. And Sammy Watkins, Hollywood Brown played really well.
Yeah. I was going to say, Sammy Watkins. What do you think of wide receiver 1 for Sammy Watkins?
So he's not wide receiver 1. He actually probably is at this point because Rashad Bateman's not playing. But
I mean, because Rashad Bateman's not there.
He looked good. I think Hollywood looked really good. That's the one that scared me the most.
I mean, Sammy had 8 targets, man. 8 targets. And he only had 4 catches for 100 yards.
Hollywood had 6 and went 6 for 6. And I know what's gonna happen that next time around is that they're gonna throw more because you kind of have no choice at this point. So Villanueva is going to move back to left tackle. Patrick McCarry is a backup O lineman. He's moving the right tackle for this week.
Dang.
So I am nervous about how the run game is going to go.
Yeah, because that messes up your whole scheme.
I think this is going to force Lamar to throw. If the Ravens somehow lose within 10, I am counting it as a victory. I will say we are 1-1, literally.
Yeah.
But I think Lamar is still going to do good. But yeah, that was a tough one. I was like, yay, yay, and then
So on the other side of the ball, I've got 2 words for you. Darren Waller. Darren Waller, dude. 19 targets. 19 targets.
Holy
crap.
He is the true number 1 target there.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I have him in a couple other leagues, and I was like, I sent you this one because I'm in one redraft league. I had Tyson Williams, Darren Waller, Justin Tucker. That's who I had left. I was down by 45. I came back and won by 10.
Yeah,
because Darren Waller just balled out. But the thing is with Waller is just he is such a matchup nightmare, and I feel way more vindicated by the fact that he is a clear tight end 2 in my mind.
Yeah.
I don't think he's he's beat out Kittle. Kelce. Yeah, I think he's beat out Kittle.
Definitely.
I think we can confirm that.
Yeah.
Because I feel like you can even make this argument that it's going to be Kelce, Waller, then a lower tier Kittle, and then another tier Hawkinson, Andrews. I'll even add Higbee in that category, but
you got to worry about now, like with Kittle, you got to worry about his injuries because he's struggled the last couple of years with injuries.
It's just not so much injuries for me. It's more of the fact that Deebo Samuel, Ayuk, Sherfield, but now Elijah Mitchell, but then Garoppolo is still kind of the quarterback there. We'll see what happens. Like he got 11 points, which isn't bad, but it's not like what you were expecting. And with
it's Waller, not his normal production.
With Waller, 19 targets might be the average. I think Waller's hit the point of he's getting so many targets, it's untradeable at this point.
Yeah. like I don't know if I could turn away. Like there
No,
was some discussion this week of me trading away Waller for a couple different players. I think
yeah,
Swift
in a
and
different
somebody
league, but
else. And I'm like, heck no. I was
Walker's just
considering it at first, and after Monday, I was
19
like,
targets a game.
19, man, I can't do it.
Yeah, I
Okay.
don't know, but man,
Yeah.
if you want,
That just oh,
there were so many other games. I want to bring up one, the debacle of the Titans being one of them. Last
yeah.
week I said, watch out for Julio and AJ Brown. Boy, do I feel like an idiot after saying that one. AJ Brown at least caught a touchdown, but
Yeah.
man,
And
Julio did
Derrick Henry
absolutely.
even struggled. They shut the
Yeah,
Titans offense down. Like
I didn't think Chandler.
they cannot do it.
Chandler Jones played out of his mind. JJ Watt was JJ Watt,
Yeah.
but I really thought
Oh.
the number 2 corner would give a problem. Did not give a problem
Mm-hmm.
at all. And man, now besides the fact that everyone struggled, what has me more concerned about Tennessee is the fact that they went from first to play in percentage of play action passing to now last. And that team is built on play action passing. If they just
Yeah.
if the play calling just is not going to do it, then I'm hitting the panic button on Tennessee right now. Coming from
On
a
everyone.
dynasty, coming from a dynasty owner
Yeah.
that has Julio and AJ Brown.
Yeah, and I don't like that as a Hunt or as a Derrick Henry owner in some other leagues.
Yeah,
I do not like that.
I
His
had
production last week
Tannehill
was,
too.
yeah, that was not good.
Yeah,
And when you have a
so
threat like that in your backfield, you use them. Go play action. You make those linebackers
like
stay in
have to
close.
commit.
Yeah,
So that's going to be something I'm going to be taking a look at, like with for the next couple of weeks, is to see how is the play action passing of Tennessee. Because if it's down, if it's as down or as bad as we think it can be, this is going to be a long year.
yeah, yeah, really. Another matchup, or another game that I wanted to talk about before we transition on to our next segment is the Rams Bears game. Stafford going ham
This
on
is what
that Bears defense.
this is I
Oh
kept
my
saying this
gosh.
about Stafford. It was watch
I
out for
know.
Stafford.
And Stafford has always he's been in a bad system. I mean, his whole time in Detroit, he hasn't really had much of an offense to work with and hardly any defense. So having that Rams offense with him, oh, that's crazy good.
And if you ever
Um,
saw the play chart for all of the passing attempts,
mhm,
literally all but 3 passes were within 20 yards,
yeah,
which is wild to me because it's like, oh, little bit, little bit, little bit. And then obviously with McVay, when you take your shot, he will scheme it up to be so wide open. Boom,
yeah.
I can hit it. And with
And that's why
Goff
Cup had such a great day.
up, Van Jefferson,
Yeah,
Robert Woods at the very end. But
yeah. But I saw this stat. Um, he this is a stat for Matthew Stafford. He was the first and only person to score almost a perfect passer rating in his first game with a new team. He had 156 passer rating. Crazy,
unbelievable.
crazy. Over 300 yards, three
And
TDs.
first game with a new
Good
team, it's
lord,
yeah.
he's a perfect fit over there. He really
You
is.
see why the Rams said we're going to go out and get him.
Yeah, and he's a veteran. He knows what he's doing. Now, obviously, Stafford's picked apart the Bears' defense his whole
Yeah, his
career.
whole career.
So now this is a defense that he knew that he was able to pick apart. It may work for this one week. It may be different next week. When he
Yeah.
faces someone else, but he's used to facing the Bears defense maybe even 3 times a year. So, you know, that's just a Stafford. But another thing that I was
Darrell
surprised with,
Henderson looked good.
yeah, Darrell Henderson looked good, but also David Montgomery looked good.
I
Surprisingly.
He looked very fast,
Yeah.
explosive to where it's like, ooh, okay, I like this.
Yeah.
You
And
know,
he
what
didn't have
also
that the last couple of years.
he
Like he did
didn't.
not have that. And he didn't have yards per carry that a workhorse back should have.
Yeah,
Like he struggled a lot the last couple of years. So I like that he's finally showing his potential, I
yeah.
should say.
I want to give some let's just say behind the curtain look. We are currently recording on Thursday. Giants and Washington are playing right now. You want me to tell you Terry McLaurin's stats right now?
Oh no. What happened?
5 catches, 50 yards, and a touchdown right off the bat.
Holy cow.
Saved.
Lord.
Scary Terry is saved.
Yeah. And that's
Oh,
with Taylor
Heineke.
Heineke. Yeah, Heineke.
This is what we. So I'll bring this back up because I want to applaud both of us here because we talked about no matter I think how Washington took it is no matter what they'll be okay this year. We're gonna load up with Curtis Samuel, Adam Humphries, Terry's there, Antonio Gibson's there. We're just going to load it up. Fitzpatrick can get us there, we think, but we also know Taylor Heineke's pretty good. And if we have the chance at a franchise quarterback, that franchise quarterback is already going to have the weapons ready. And we talked about this in our free agent episode. And look, literally, what's happening now. Scary Terry is kind of back.
Yeah,
with a decent quarterback for once. And I would say Fitz is still a decent quarterback, but Taylor Heineke is able to get the ball to him too.
Yeah, and Taylor Heineke last year he played in 1 or 2 games as kind of a relief QB. He did great. I was really surprised. I was like, "Who is this guy?"
Game especially.
Like who is this guy? My gosh. So seeing that he's back to how he was last season, that's awesome. That's great to see for Washington.
Back on topic, however.
Yeah.
So you want to start taking bets on when Justin Fields is going to get in? Because I think it's now more
I take bets on sure things.
Because I will tell you right now.
I don't know when he's going to be in, but I know he's going to be in before the end of this.
Here's my prediction. I have nothing to base this on. If they don't do it by week 3, they will do it on their bye week. I think it's like all but guaranteed just for me because we already see him on the field. Now, if they didn't have him on the field completely, I would be a little cautious of that because then that's kind of a la like Tua situation where he really wasn't on the field and then they just rushed him in because no one realized that the Houston pick that they got for the Laremy Tunsil trade was going to be a top 3.
Mm-hmm.
So because of that, I think that's where Tua may not have been ready. Also, just coming off of that hip injury. But the fact that Fields is already, pun intended, already on the field, he scored nonetheless.
Yeah.
I think you're just opening it up for Fields to take the job. So that's why if Andy Dalton struggles against Cincinnati of all teams, I expect Fields week 3.
And Fields owners, be prepared.
Yeah, be prepared. This can get
that I see him being one of the top Bs if he plays a full season.
Yeah. I mean,
he's got the running capability, he's got the arm. He has
a good receiver,
a good offense around him, a good defense. Yeah. It's gonna be good. That's really the only thing that the Bears have been lacking the last couple of years is a really good QB.
And he'll have his rookie mistakes, but like you can do so much with Fields, and I feel like it's going to open up things way more. So yeah, I'm okay with them signing Dalton though, just because you didn't know you were going to get Fields at the time. I don't think anyone expected Fields to be like not top 10, but I just think it's inevitable at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definite. He's going to be in before the end of the year, and watch us. We'll look like fools when he never takes another step on the
Yeah,
field
I
until
will,
next year.
and I will be very sad, and then I will point the finger at Matt Nagy.
Yeah.
So,
Well, yeah, he's one of those he's one of those head coaches, sorry, head coaches that are kind of on the chopping block right now.
yeah.
So we'll
And
see.
speaking of the chopping block, I mean, I apologize to all Raheem Mostert fans because it went from kind of out to 8 weeks to the season,
Yeah.
and
I heard
so
he was voluntarily, like he voluntarily went out for the season.
so here's the problem with that. I think there is, well, I wouldn't say problem. I think there is a good chance of re-injury. And especially with Mostert, it's like I might as well just get healthy 100%, then get after it. And nothing much you can do there. Out for the year.
The problem,
along with Gus Edwards. So if you're a running back this year, watch out.
The problem with that is if Trey Sermon comes in
and starts
tearing up the league.
We can't say Trey Sermon. He was a healthy scratch last week. It might be Elijah Mitchell.
Yeah.
Well, so I think it's Elijah Mitchell, JaMychal Hasty, and Trey Sermon. That's your three for sure. You're going to get Jeff Wilson sometime later, but you also know how the Shanahan backs are going to be. It's just
it's going to be a constant carousel.
You're going to figure it out basically.
Yeah,
because there's really hasn't been a clear, definitive like RB1 under a Shanahan offense probably since Devonta Freeman.
Yeah, and I was hoping that Mostert would actually last more than one game. He got injured last year, and I was just like, I was bummed because I think he has great potential.
Yeah, and he has such
get onto the field. That's his problem, is staying healthy and getting on the field.
Yeah.
So
nothing much you can do there. We mentioned Gus Edwards, so as a Ravens fan, we'll see what happens. Right now, it's Tyson Williams, Devonta Freeman, Latavius Murray. I will say, as far as a Ravens fan, a lot of Ravens fans in the community bring up 2015. This does not feel 2015. To me, this feels more like 2007, just because of the fact that basically the issue is that we're losing so many people up front, but the expectations were so high. In 2015, everyone's like, 8-8, call it a day. And then by the 8th game, everything went downhill when like Forsett and Flacco went out with basically season-ending injuries. This one kind of hurts because to me, the Ravens were like, we have a Super Bowl team right here. And everything just gets destroyed. LJ Fort, Gus Edwards, JK, Marcus Peters, the list goes on and on. We already have 13 players in IR.
Yeah.
Possibly 15. So.
And that's rough. That's just a rough year, man. It's a bad start to the year.
What do you do?
Yeah.
I'm happy there's 17 games this year, because it may take all 17 for the Ravens to have a shot.
No joke. Same with the Vikings. Good Lord.
And someone who's going to be thankfully nothing bad happened to this player, and that is Jerry Jeudy. It looked like a broken ankle, but it was a sprained ankle, and I'm happy.
Yeah.
I'm just relieved. I would have felt really bad for Jeudy there, because you saw it in the game. He's on the precipice, he's on the cusp of being really, really good.
He's a star, and he needs to. I mean, last year they just lacked somebody to properly feed him the ball, and they just need to take advantage of it. Or advantage of him. So him being out, that sucks for the Broncos. But when he gets back, hopefully he'll be healthy. Hopefully he'll be re-energized, and
who knows? Denver might be in playoff contention at that point, or even division. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe.
Well,
all right.
Speaking of contention and division.
Moving on to our Dynasty League. So that was kind of the news for the NFL. We're going to move on to our Dynasty League. where we have our biggest blowout. Do you want to announce the biggest blowout, Josh?
I will. Yeah. Ashley, we're so sorry. So,
Oh man.
so Ryan went up against Ashley, and it became a
Josh's wife, so
yeah,
everybody knows.
yeah. That did not end well. Thanks, Aaron Rodgers. I
Yeah,
will say,
it was a struggle bus for her, and
I also
I
have to
feel
look as like who else struggled that week
oh yeah,
because
here.
because the only thing that really saved Ashley was the fact of two players, Tyreek Hill and Darren Waller.
Yep. Yeah. Mike Evans kind of fell flat for only
Oh,
5 points.
see,
And
Evans
then Aaron Rodgers and
Evans is the
Cortland
one.
Sutton too.
Yeah, Evans is the one that I don't know how to feel yet
Yeah.
because Godwin and AB get open way more, but Evans is also right there. And I feel like, unfortunately, what may happen is this little carousel of you don't know who's going to take off each week.
And that's why I don't like the Tampa Bay wide receiving core. And I have one of the Tampa Bay wide receiving core.
Yeah.
I like him, but I don't like him. Just because it is that constant carousel of who's gonna catch the ball. And I like Chris Godwin just because he's young, he's hungry. You know, the other two have some years on him, especially AB. But
I feel like
we saw last week, AB still can
still,
catch the dang ball.
yeah,
So
and he can still get open.
yeah.
And on top of that, Godwin just gets open more, I would
Yeah.
say, on the intermediate side of things. And I think it's just going to be interesting because Gronk was also involved. So
Yeah.
what option number is Evans at this point? But I don't. So going on from Evans, because I say there's a clear level of concern. Aaron Rodgers put up probably one of the worst games I've ever seen Aaron Rodgers play. So hopefully that doesn't happen again.
Yeah, when you get replaced by, was it Jordan Love?
Yep.
Yeah, it's Jordan Love. Did you get replaced by Jordan Love in what, the second quarter?
I think it was third, but yeah, I know he played the
I thought it was like the
quarter.
second quarter.
Yeah, no.
Good Lord. Like when you get replaced, this is the reigning MVP.
So let me
get replaced.
Let me tell you, this is where Checo line. That's all I'm going to say here, and it's something Ryan and I talked about again.
Yeah,
Corey Linsley is on the Chargers now, and David Bakhtiari wasn't playing. So your starting left tackle and your starting center gone.
Mm-hmm.
On top of that, your upgrade at, no offense to Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Alan Lazard, not really good number two options. So you bring in Randall Cobb, who's not bad, but not a clear upgrade. You draft Amari Rodgers.
I mean, he hasn't been a legitimate passing threat or a wide receiver threat
for a long
years since Jordy Nelson was in.
Yeah,
it was over there. Like, it's like, interesting. I think he's somebody to watch.
It's something you need to watch. Obviously, there's probably going to be a positive regression from Aaron Rodgers, just kind of how laws of nature works. But I didn't think it was going to be that bad. But
yeah. So the blowout was 187 to 143. Honestly, when you really look at the scores, it doesn't look as bad as it, or the numbers show a little more than what it actually looks like.
And I think the two people that we just talked about were the clear reasons why it became so bad.
Yeah. And I mean, I had Brandon Ayuk on my team, but to be honest, I had a lot of people who balled out. Like I had CMC 30 points, Tom Brady 30 points, Chris Godwin 24.
Jamar
I had
Chase.
DeAndre Swift for 29, Corey Davis for 26.
Yeah.
So the rest of my team was real solid,
Was
and they
insane.
showed up. Yeah, they showed up. Like, she would have beat most of the other teams in our league, or at least a majority of them.
And she would have beaten me. Let's go with that.
And I wasn't even the highest scoring team in our league.
Yeah.
So,
Which, I mean, well, let's bring out that reward. Week one's highest scorer. It's Michaela?
Yeah. That surprised the heck out of me.
I was about to say, I looked back at it, I was like, really? But if you want to take a look at her team, she scored 187.
Yeah.
Mahomes, obviously. Saquon, I mean, not so much, but you got Mixon did great this week. Amari Cooper, obviously.
Mixon, I wasn't. Yeah, 30 points. I wasn't predicting Mixon to get that. Yeah. My gosh.
I mean, even though she had Mark Andrews, didn't do anything. Lockett had 2 touchdowns. James Robinson, even though he didn't do anything, you still have. I mean, Matthew Stafford on the bench. James Conner looks pretty good, but like, you had all these other players who just completely elevated it, and I'm looking back, it's like, ooh, wow, okay.
Yeah, it's just her team was just solid all the way around. It didn't look like it would have been, pre-week one, but just how her players played out last week, they balled. That's what I love about fantasy football. Like,
so we give the best team of the week award definitely goes to Michaela for week one.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, so I'm going to put these two together, the closest matchup and also the most disappointing matchup, I'm going to say is me. I scored. So here's what's start. I scored the least in every single league, in every single team, and even though, funny enough, me and Durant's team had the closest matchup technically, it was still sad. Unfortunately for me, and this is what we brought up earlier, I had Julio Jones. We'll see what happens there, but probably another scary part. And Ryan Fitzpatrick just out after first quarter.
Screwed you.
Negative 0.08 points. I don't know how you can come back from that.
Yeah, and Tanya did
nothing either. I think he'll do better this week. If he doesn't do better this week, that's when I may start looking at a different tight end, honestly. Yeah. But yeah, overall disappointing week for me. I mean, that's how fantasy is sometimes. The ones talking about it, it's the one doing the worst.
No joke.
But yeah.
Yeah.
So
what was your biggest disappointment in fantasy this week? Like biggest fantasy, player.
I would say it's probably Tennessee. I mean, honestly, Tennessee for me was
just
the
Tennessee
one
in general. All
in
of them.
general, like Derrick Henry surprised me. Derrick Henry disappointed. I mean, just Julio. I mean, AJ Brown did all right, but he got lucky with the touchdown. But it was just that offense did not click whatsoever.
Yeah,
I feel like
they were off.
And I feel like some of the other games, like you kind of had expectations where they weren't going to do good. Tennessee was schematically, this should be easy, and it wasn't. So give props to.
Yeah, if they don't make any changes, they need to jettison that offensive coordinator.
And you know what? And so what's good / what's bad is the fact that defense did not look better.
Yeah.
And so it's either going to be a shootout each time. So Derrick Henry, watch out. So I don't know. Tennessee was the one that just blew my mind to where it's like, I don't know.
Yeah. And see, for me, it was just one player, Brandon Ayuk. I expected a lot from him, and he got me 0.3 points. And there's no saying when he's actually going to be back because he's struggling with a hamstring injury, which
he's had that for a
Yeah.
while in training camp.
He's had
So
that through the preseason. So I don't know how long he's going to be struggling with it. So until he's out there for
you
more than a week or two solid playing, like he should, he's going to sit on my bench
yeah,
because I can't trust him.
yeah. So we brought up disappointment, but Ryan, who was your biggest surprise this week?
To be honest, I'd have to say either DeAndre Swift or Brandon Cooks.
Yeah, Cooks is a good one.
Because Swift, like he had a decent, he had decent carries, but they utilized him and Jamal Williams, and they
Yeah, both did really good.
both almost scored over 25 points, which is crazy. Like, good Lord. But to see Brandon Cooks go out there with Tyrod Taylor, out of all QBs, Tyrod Taylor just put up those numbers, yeah, Brandon Cooks is a wide receiver 1 for the Titans, but just to see that chemistry that they had, and it was solid. Like they did really well.
I feel like week 2 is going to show us, okay, who
Mm-hmm.
are the true Houston Texans? Because if they somehow play competitively against Cleveland,
Mm-hmm.
I think let's start ringing. It's like, okay, everyone's way better than we thought they would be.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And that's why, like, I was really surprised, and nobody else was, because I don't think they had very much faith in him. But I was really surprised to pick up Brandon Cooks in a very late round of the draft. Very late.
But I think the problem with that is you lose Deshaun Watson, you lose Will Fuller, and it's a whole new system, and you go,
Yeah.
really? Do you think with Tyrod, if you can put up the same numbers?
Mm-hmm.
So far, it's yes.
Yeah, and that's why I was really surprised to find way down there. Like there was second and third string wide receivers going rounds before Brandon Cooks.
I will say personally for me, I avoided Brandon Cooks for that reason. It was like I was like, I don't know.
Yeah, and he's sitting on my bench right now. I watched him score all those points. But, I sleep well knowing that I have a solid, backup wide receiver that if push comes to shove, I have to start him. I'm not going to really worry about it too much. So, yeah.
So we do want to get to another important part of our dynasty league, which funny enough, we had another trade happen this past week, and funny enough, it's another Ravens running back. So to bring up the trade, and I believe it was with Duran, and I want to say
and Ethan.
Ethan.
So, Ethan traded Devontae Parker and a 22 or a 2022 third round pick for Tyson Williams.
So, do I think this is an immediate move right now? Yes.
Yeah.
I still think it's a solid trade.
It's a solid trade for anyone who is wanting to win right now. Yes. Acquiring Tyson Williams is a good option. The one worrying factor that I have about Tyson Williams is Murray. And
so
because that was less than a week into his term at in Baltimore. So, and he was taking quite a few reps from Tyson Williams. So
throughout that game, all right, so Greg Roman, the offensive coordinator, came out this week and said that they just wanted to get Latavius Murray involved. And I think the biggest thing you also have to understand the context of you can't really run Tyson Williams into the ground because, well, you got no running backs after him.
Yeah.
And so he is literally the last running back that knows the system.
Yeah.
So you kind of had to give Latavius Murray a couple reps. Now, the whole differential between first half, second half, I think we're gonna have to figure out what happened there. My theory at the moment is pass pro. His pass pro is not the greatest, and if you saw Lamar's second fumble, Nassib got him, and I think that might be a potential reason why they didn't have him. They didn't have him, but if you go and look at some other Baltimore Ravens accounts, you'll start realizing there were a lot of plays that if J.K. Dobbins or Gus Edwards were running the ball, it's a house ball.
Yeah.
And that happened so many times during the Raiders. And that's the only thing that's kind of frustrating. But I think Tyson Williams, he looked really good.
He looked solid.
He also caught passes out of the backfield. That's a new thing for the Ravens offense. I say that is an important thing going forward in fantasy. But my biggest worry about it, so yours is Latavius Murray. Mine's actually just next year. That's my biggest worry about it.
Yeah.
Because
and that's what. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, just because Devontae Parker is probably still going to be the Miami Dolphins top receiver next year. That third round pick is probably going to get used. We'll figure out how that's going to get used. That's kind of a null and void part of the deal. For me, it's as soon as next year hits, it's J.K. and Gus, then Tyson.
Yeah, and that's why like this is Ethan's bid to win this season.
Yeah.
So he is sacrificing that third round and Devontae to win this season. And that's why he's bolstering his running back core so that he can win.
Which if we want to take a look at his team right now, as I pull this up. I mean, his running backs, Mike Davis, Nick Chubb.
I think he's finally coming to the realization that Mike Davis is not going to be a great running back.
Probably not. But
I told him
other running backs, I should say, Kareem Hunt, Josh Jacobs, now Tyson Williams, and
I think it was unnecessary for him to purchase.
It was a little unnecessary, but I will also say it was slightly necessary if you want to be proactive with Josh Jacobs.
That's true.
Because as much as Josh Jacobs had a good week in fantasy, 10 carries for 34 yards.
Yeah.
And that toe was bothering him.
Mm-hmm.
Because he came off the field sometimes limping, and like he kind of fought through the game. But it's like, we got 16 more games, buddy.
But he's also got Nick Chubb, Mike Davis, Darrell Henderson.
Darrell Henderson too. So
he's got plenty of people.
This year, I feel like it's fine, unless it's just taking a swing.
The problem that I see with his team though is I don't see Mike Davis being there more than this year. I think he's going to get replaced next year in the draft, and
Darrell Henderson replaced by Cam Akers next year.
Same.
Tyson Williams,
now you have
J.K. Gus Edwards.
Yeah. So now you have 3 running backs on your roster that won't make any sense past this year.
Yeah.
That
what do you do about that? So let's
see, and that's the struggle with dynasty. You want long term. That's why I went really young for all of my players.
For me, that's why I went really young at the quarterback position.
And I sacrificed a lot of the experience, a lot of the surefire players that would win me this year. I sacrificed them for the future. And that's why I got players like Kyle Pitts, which don't even get me started on him. A lot of people are jumping ship on him, but
I wouldn't jump ship yet.
He had the same amount of targets as Calvin Ridley last week.
It was just a bad matchup. I honestly think the Eagles just made
not
better
upset
than
by
what
that.
we realized.
Yeah. And that's why he had the same amount of targets as Calvin Ridley. I am not upset by that. My gosh.
Yeah, the fact that the target share is still the same. That's still.
But I went with DeAndre Swift. So Kyle Pitts, DeAndre Swift, Jamar Chase.
CMC
I went with Trevor Lawrence. I went real young, straight out of this draft or last year, just to focus on the upcoming years.
And then Brady when you can.
Yeah.
So that just keeps you competitive for now, but then you're set up for the future. That's why, for me, I personally went like Antonio Gibson and AJ Brown into his like third year. And a couple other players but I kind of went on the younger side too. Now that for me, I took more swings at my quarterback position because I was just really high on them. So like Zach Wilson, Mac Jones, Darnold, Carson Wentz still.
Yeah.
And it's like, look, if any of them hit, I'm good to go. And
Yeah,
especially with the
exactly.
quarterbacks, it's really rare to have all five succeed. Though it does look like that this year, in my opinion.
Mhm.
But it's also really rare to have all five fail.
Yeah.
And so it's like I took two of them. Like I'm just bolstering my chances for the future. So I
Yeah.
think overall with Ethan is he may very well end up winning this year. But
Yeah.
he's an
And he
immediate
doesn't have,
rebuild.
yeah. And that's, there may be a reason for him to stockpile all of this, because really he gave up a third round and a wide receiver that he wasn't really using
He wasn't going to use
for
anyway.
a top running back this year, or at least a top 15 running back this year. So you never know. He could flip that. He could flip him, that guy, and say Darrell Henderson this year for somebody who's desperate for running backs, because
Yeah.
injuries happen.
And
He
who
could flip
knows?
those two for a couple of firsts or seconds. And at that point, I'd say that this right here that set him up for that, this trade was a success.
And
So,
to give credit to Ethan, we don't know what's going to happen within
yeah,
by week 10. And
exactly.
that's where things are going to get very interesting. We're going to see trades like come up. It's like, well, all right, who really won the trade?
Yeah.
Like, not even a week into the trade, I went from thinking I won the trade to immediately thinking I lost because I lost a healthy running back and a
Yeah.
third round pick.
And see, me, I was exactly opposite of that. I left the trade, and I told Josh this. I may even have said it last week, but I didn't look at my roster for the first week. I was so embarrassed of it. I was like, I totally lost this draft. This was just awful. And a couple weeks after, I into the preseason, I should say, I started looking at my roster and I'm like, actually, this is not a terrible team. It's not terrible. I did it really young. And after last week, I'm happy with my team. I'm happy with what I found in it. So
Yeah,
yeah.
time will tell, and
Yeah,
that's the name of
exactly.
fantasy. And which
Yep.
now, speaking of time and fantasy, week 2 matchups we want to bring up within our dynasty league, specifically the one between you and me.
Yeah.
Do I think it's going to be fun? Yes. Do I expect myself to lose? Possible. Honestly, I would not be surprised just because I have a couple hard matchups this year. I mean, not this year, this week. For
Yeah.
example, I mean, Gibson right now going against New York, which as of this recording, he has 6.6 points.
Yeah. At halftime. So
Yeah. Ugh.
yeah.
But AJ Brown has a tough one. Debo goes against Philly. Um, Allen Robinson plays Cincinnati. We're gonna get some answers about the Chicago offense. Alvin Cook gets Arizona. Oh boy. So overall, I don't. I'm nervous. I'm also
Yeah.
starting Mac Jones, who is going to be one of the players I am going to be looking at this week, just because that game is going to tell me who's my franchise quarterback.
Yeah. Yeah. It really will. It really will. And I have a lot of fairly favorable matchups. Tom Brady against Atlanta. Atlanta's secondary hasn't been
Godwin
great for the
against
last couple of years.
Atlanta.
Yeah, Godwin against Atlanta. The one downside is Kyle Pitts against Tampa Bay. I don't expect him to produce hardly at all. So,
But
but
I think you do have a
yeah,
couple of ones that are really interesting. Damian Harris versus the Jets.
yeah,
Um, and then Corey Davis versus New England, I think is going to be interesting.
hmm
Swift versus Green Bay, I actually think can be really good. My sneaky suspicion, I didn't like that Green Bay defense that we just saw,
yeah,
and I think Swift and Jamal Williams can get going.
Yeah. I I think so too. I really hope that Swift overtakes him. I mean, he had a majority of touches last week, but I really hope that Swift starts to dominate that offense
And especially that
and
target
just
share for that
oh,
moment.
I really hope he does. I invested a lot into Swift,
Yeah,
and to see
that was
that was
your
second round pick.
yeah, your second round pick.
Yeah, yeah, spent a lot on him. DeAndre Swift. I went CMC and DeAndre Swift.
Here's what I will say. I think you have to be encouraged by what you see in Detroit. Yes, Goff
Yeah.
ain't that good. Yes, the receivers are not that good, but their trenches look good.
Mhm.
Like Sewell back at left tackle looks incredible. At this point, I am forcing Taylor Decker to right tackle. Like you have to keep Penny Sewell at left.
Yeah.
Like I think he's just too good at left tackle.
Well, and that's where he's natural. Like that's where he's always been. So yeah.
So, but besides us, another matchup I say we should really talk about as one we are going to keep our eye on is Alex Helt versus Duran.
Yeah.
And
I yeah. Both of them are going to be interesting. I don't really trust either of their running back cores. So they've got Duran's got David Montgomery, Miles Sanders,
when he's
and
really playing hero back.
yeah, and then Alex has Ezekiel Elliott and CEH.
So CEH, I have a feeling could be kind of decent.
Mhm.
We'll see how this Ravens defense is. Zeke, Zeke is gonna have another tough matchup.
Yeah,
But I mean, he was literally like what kind of gives me hope is that yes, why he didn't have the stats, he really was just there to pass protect. And but
definitely.
I mean, the Cowboys offense kind of needed that. And so while I'm not happy with how Zeke has been performing, I have Zeke in other leagues, but he is being thought of the offense because his pass pro sales is like, hey, we need you for this. And so
Yeah,
I have a feeling when they can get to a point where they're like, hey, we can run the ball now, they'll run the ball. And so
yeah.
I have no I have I my well, I can't speak. My faith in Zeke has not been lost.
I see. I'm opposite of that. I've lost faith in Zeke ever since last year. I just did not want to invest in him. That's why I traded him away near the end last year in one of my leagues. I just couldn't. I couldn't invest. I couldn't do it. Just he did so badly after Dak left. He struggled a lot, and I think that shows you his running capabilities. Because even when there's not a passing game, good running back can at least get something going on the ground. But he was not able to get anything going. And that really shows me like his running ability has really kind of not dropped off, but
Almost
has gone
plateaued.
downhill. Yeah, has gone downhill since his earlier days because he used to run with hunger, run with fire. And now it feels like he just hits holes and is just okay. I'm
I
just gonna
mean,
run for a couple of yards.
I can see that. I also think there's no way that you can talk about the early success of Zeke without
Yeah,
talking about the degradation that's been the Cowboys O line,
that's
losing
true.
like Travis Frederick, and
Mm-hmm.
then Lyle Collins has been kind of iffy. Tyrone Smith, there's Zach Martin, and then
Yep.
I mean it's kind of gone downhill for a bit. And there's been a
Yeah.
few years where it's gone downhill. And then last year, especially, as soon as Dak went down, you kind of
Oh,
knew it was like, oh,
yeah,
fire sale Zeke.
yeah, exactly. And see, I think if you put Tony Pollard in place of Ezekiel Elliott right now, if you just benched Zeke for a week and put Tony Pollard in, you'd see a tremendous upside
You're
for
just
Tony
rubbing
Pollard.
this in my face, aren't you?
What?
Tony
What?
Pollard. It's
No, but
Tony
seriously,
Pollard.
I think if you put in Tony Pollard, he's going to do good.
Would have
So
been
I
real
don't know.
nice to have compared to a running back that just tore his ACL.
Yeah.
But I can totally get that. But I think Zeke has always been better with Dak,
Hmm.
and so that's why I am hopeful this year. I
Yeah.
will say though, if he does not, if it's not good this year, I don't think it's going to be good ever again. To where
Yeah.
I don't think Zeke is going to be a viable option.
Yeah. And yeah, same here. I I don't think Zeke is an elite running back anymore.
I think that's fair to say.
I don't think he is. Um, yeah.
Put that on
So
a t-shirt.
sorry, Zeke. Um, so our next segment. What are some players that you are going to watch this week
Yeah. So
for fantasy output?
So as far as for my dynasty team, I'm very interested in New England and the Jets just because I get to watch two of the quarterbacks I drafted go against each other. Zach Wilson for the Jets, Mac Jones for the Patriots. I'm interested to see them both. Zach Wilson really struggled last year. I mean,
Mhm.
not last year, last week, but rookie mistakes. I get it,
But he
but
produced. He
he
produced.
still produced. That's the biggest thing. Where Mac Jones, he did what he had to do. Wasn't the greatest of stats, but he did pretty good for the most part, especially that being his first start. So, in all reality, I think I'm interested to see in both. But there is another matchup I want to talk about, just overall fantasy, and that is the Bucks receivers versus Atlanta. Because I will make another claim at this point: someone's taking off that game. I don't
Yeah.
know who, because it's the Bucks receivers, but someone will, and
It's gonna
that's
be
my
Godwin.
prediction.
It's gonna be Godwin.
I want Godwin again. I had to go against Godwin last week, and I was
Yep.
nervous.
Yep. It's gonna be Godwin.
The only reason I won one fantasy matchup in my league, in another league I'm in, is for the fact Mozart went down,
Hmm.
and then Nick Chubb outscored technically both running backs, and then Tyson Williams did his thing. But
Yeah.
man, I just Atlanta does not
Speaking of outscoring both running backs, CMC
back to his usual ways, and
back to his usual dominating self. Oh,
CMC the most obvious first number one overall pick in fantasy?
for
Like
right now,
if we
yeah,
think in the history of fantasy, is he the most obvious?
yeah. In years that he's not injured, even if he's injured for 2 or 3 weeks,
Yeah.
he's still number one.
I'm just trying to think like in past years who would have been probably like Adrian Peterson or something like that. But
Yeah,
I think
AP.
CMC, especially in PPR format, like I think it's just the
There's
most obvious number one pick.
yeah. I mean, he is their offense. I mean, he had almost 200 yards, 100 rushing and 100 passing.
He was the RB1 without
Yeah.
a touchdown.
Yep.
How insane is that?
Yeah. It's crazy.
Oh, and you're
Like,
complaining about having the number one overall pick.
okay, I'm still every time he touches that field, I get scared because I don't
Last year is
want to waste my
seared.
first round pick on somebody who's going to get injured. That scared me to death last year when that happened.
Boy, that
Because
helped out in
I
our
did.
keeper league, though.
Yeah, it did because you stole him from me. I dropped him. Okay, all right. All right. I'm sore about this. I'm going to talk about it on our podcast, Josh.
All right, all right.
So
Welcome to your
last year,
therapy.
my first, so we have an ESPN league that me and Josh are both in, and we're both commissioners of. And I, I, I think I was the first pick last year, and I ended up picking CMC. Well, he went down. He got injured, and it was a redraft league. Every year we'd redraft. Well, near the end of the year, we decided to change it to a keeper league. Well, at that point, I had dropped CMC because I don't need him. I'm
Well,
just
let's
going to
still
end
talk
up
about how
redrafting
nasty your
last
team
year.
was. Your team was nasty. You didn't need him.
Okay, I didn't need him, but if I did have him, I would have whooped everybody. And this was my 12-2 year. Like last year, I went 12-2, and I dominated our league. But if I had CMC, I probably would have been undefeated easily if CMC had been active.
So to bring up the other part of the story, I was the number two or number 4 pick. I don't remember which one exactly, but I took Saquon, thinking, you know what, I believe in Saquon. Well, I stopped believing after week 2 because he took his ACL away, and
took an L.
yeah, took an ACL, and so I'm like, I went 4-10, and
yep.
well, and I the point that we're talking about, I probably was like 2-10 at this point, and I was like, you know what? Let me get this trade. That one person picked him up, Andrew did, and I said, let me just trade for him. Let me just trade for him. And this was now, mind everyone here, this was before we decided this to be the keeper league.
Yeah.
And so I just traded him just in the off chance that he comes back. He never came back, but I still had him. And then we decide to make it a keeper league.
I decided because Josh didn't do this just because he had CMC. So I just want to make that clear. Like, I was the commissioner at that point, and I just added Josh in, like, whenever we made that decision to make it a keeper league. So
yeah. And then I'm like, man, I did really bad this year. I don't know who my keepers are. And then lo and behold, I remember, I go, wait a minute. I got DK. I got Davante Adams. I have CMC. And so I went, yes, I got CMC. I'm doing pretty good. And so in our redraft league that turned into a keeper league, my keepers ended up being CMC, Davante Adams, DK Metcalf, and George Kittle, and Ryan has been salty since.
Yeah, a little bit. But it was a good pickup. It was a good pickup. It was my fault for dropping him. I should never have done that because that was dumb. Oh. But in the moment, it made sense because it was a redraft.
In the moment, it made sense.
Yeah,
well, of course. And so in the moment right now, we are about to head into week 2, or actually just started week 2. And now as I check the game at the moment, right now it is 14-10 Washington football team, beginning of the third quarter. So we'll see Antonio Gibson, Terry, probably Logan Thomas as well, along with Golladay, Saquon.
Terry.
It's so week 2 is now upon us and has begun, and we will see y'all next week talking about recapping week 2 and going into week 3. Man, talking football can't get anything better than that.
Nothing.
So we will see y'all next week. Thank you for listening to the Last Place Fantasy Football Podcast. This is Josh with my co-host Ryan, and we will see y'all next week.
See ya.